Welcome to the Future Ready podcast from Siemens. I'm Nick Finberg, and we're covering software-defined everything today. More specifically, I have our co-host, Mark Hindsbo, the head of operations software at Siemens Digital Industries. He's here to talk about his experience in the transition to software-defined from an operations software perspective. Mark, you've got such an interesting background, and if we had more time, I just want to talk to you about your time at CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. But maybe to focus our discussion a little bit, would you mind talking about how you got into computers and software in the first place?
No, for me, it was actually a magic moment, I would say, of discovering computers as a young kid. So I grew up in the countryside of Denmark, amongst farmers, and computers were in general far away, and they typically were certainly not in the home. But one of my friends who had I guess a pretty curious and forward-looking dad had bought a Commodore VIC-20. So I guess I date myself with that. But he let us play with it, us kids. And I just remember keying in that first basic program and it actually doing what you told it to do. Stuff appearing. You figure out that you made a mistake, right? Typically, when a computer does not do what you want it to do, it's your fault, not its fault.
They're very stupid. They just follow your commands.
Exactly. So that really was it hit me at the right point in time, I guess, of curiosity of everything else. I then spent a couple of years picking strawberries to afford my own computer. So I'd get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and it was all with the intent of getting to own my own computer, which was a Commodore 64. And since then, I've been in and around computers and software. I've programmed since then. I still program for fun. No one allows me to do production code anymore. Those days are over. I have smarter people on my team that do that. But I still every now go down in my basement. I teach a class in AI at Carnegie Mellon, which is one of the local universities. So I get to write a little bit of Python code together with my students.
Very fun.
It's very much been a lifelong journey.
Well, I guess kind of a continuation. What brought you to Siemens then from this background?
So I think a couple of things melted together for me in my life. I am an engineer by education, and it's been a real pleasure in my career as well. I grew up with software. I worked, for instance, at Microsoft, so I've seen how pure software, shapes the world, and it gave us, Microsoft. We talked about Google, Netflix, your internet bank. But I characterize them as more or less pure software experiences. I do really believe that a lot of the things that are both challenges and opportunities in this world require the physical and the virtual world to really come together. So whether that be the robots that are going to help take care of me when I might need it a couple of years from now, whether that will be sustainable products or the energy challenges we have, personalized medicine, you name it. Those are things where software can really enrich the real world and in the opposite. And ultimately, that's what brought me to Siemens. I think Siemens has a tremendous opportunity to help our customers, the ones that build self-driving cars and next generation chemical plants and solar energy of the future, to give them the software tools so they effectively can manage the real and digital world. So that brought me to Siemens. I feel that we're in a point in time where we've gone from call it more or less pure software revolution. Well, let me take a step back. We had a mechanical revolution first, right? We had an industrial revolution that was 100% mechanical. That we had a software revolution, if you want, that was almost 100% digital. I think we're now in the era of combining those two.
Okay, perfect. Well, in our last episode, we talked with Rainer Bram about the concept of automating automation and how that kind of fits into the story at Siemens and software defined. And he was really making the point of it is the connection between hardware defined and software defined. I'm curious of your take on that, and maybe more specifically, how that idea might integrate with operations software, which I know you're leading up.
Yeah, no, and I think when Reiner talks about automating automation, or hopefully when you hear me talk, Reiner and I really share that mission and belief of what needs to happen. But let me take a step back, because even when we talk about hardware defined or software defined, that's really a technology led story. And I think we should maybe take a step back and say, what does it do in outcome for our customers and their customers, so to speak. And we are in an extremely dynamic world for good a lot of time, but also some bad, to be honest. Um, um, but our customers want to create more individualized products. We had a revolution of mass production, which was fantastic. And what's the old saying? You can get your Ford T in any color you want, as long as it's black,
If it's black,
right?
yep.
So those days are gone. I want it in my color, right? Internally, externally, I need my medicine specifically tailored to my DNA. We have supply chains that are constantly being refactored. I might have a supply in one part of the world today, another part of the world tomorrow. We might have a piece of PFAS regulation that says this plastic is not optimal, please substitute it with something else. That requires our customers to be a lot more adaptable, both in their product design processes, but also in their production processes. So if you want, linear assembly line that was pioneered by Ford, right, where we go from step A to step B to step C, now needs to be a much more dynamic one, where we might go step 157 for one product, we might go step 139 for another product. The assembly process needs to auto adapt itself to whatever's coming in and coming out. And that requires this software-defined hardware or hardware-defined software, whichever way you want to talk about it, to really come together so that our customers can have those facilities. So that's what it means to me. It's about the supply chains being more adaptable. It's about the product being more personalized. It's about the product being more sustainable and energy efficient. And I only believe that we can reach those capabilities by now automating automation, in Reiner's words, right? Because for me, the automation, and I think Reiner would say the same, right? The automation is this tremendous benefit we've come out of taking this linear, assembly line concept and massively automating it.
Yeah.
Now it's time to be able to have that be more dynamic and break it up and allow it to be non-linear.
Yeah, he had mentioned there's a fear or maybe hesitation with some of our customers or just people in general in the industry of, I don't want to turn this off. I don't know if it'll come back on and work correctly the next time.
Yeah, well, we're all engineers, and the old saying is, if it's not broken, right, why fix it?
Exactly.
So I get that. On the flip side, every engineer is curious, and the first thing we do is take stuff apart and break it. And I do generally think we have a real opportunity to reassemble things, and in a lot of cases, we are at the point now of diminishing return. For sort of the classic thing, the next level will come from us having more adaptable and autonomous capabilities in our factories.
Okay. Well, to that point, I've heard you talk about operations software in the past, and there's this one word you use to define the future, and then it would be opportunity. Would you mind explaining what you mean by that?
Well, I think let me just take maybe a step back, and then we'll get to opportunity, because maybe for some of our listeners, we have to define what operation software is.
Yeah,
when we talk about it, at least in a Siemens, because there's many operation software, right? For depending on what part of the industry or vertical you're in. But when we talk about operation software, for my part in Siemens, it's the software that either allows you to design a factory or plant and then subsequently operate that factory or plant to produce whatever product that you might be producing. So that's sort of the scope that we're talking about. And if you think about why do I say opportunity is back to this other notion that we are at this place where these worlds are melting together that will allow us some great new capabilities. So if we, for instance, think about the design side of designing a factory, we've had classic, call them CAD-based tools that allow us to design factories for some years now. But we really need a digital twin output from them that allows us to, in the virtual world, massively simulate our production capability and what we can do to automate it. We've done that in some respects for product design. Even today you could argue that we build physical prototypes before we have to. But think about the automotive industry. They used to crash test cars physically, prototype cars. That's $1 million roughly per car that's crashed. And you can only afford to do a couple. Today, you can, for $1 million, you can virtually crash test 10,000 cars. And you can have a much bigger design space for trying to optimize it. And then we take a production car off the assembly line and we physically crash it to make sure that our digital prototype told the right story.
Yeah, validate that simulation
exactly.
after the fact.
We do not generally do that for our factories today. But you could produce tens of thousands of variations of your factory and the humans and the robots and the machines and how they interact and how you get the optimal throughput as part of your planning process. And that was, by the way, part of what we announced with NVIDIA at CES, that we're now taking the capabilities we have to simulate your production process. We're putting them into the NVIDIA metaverse, so you have an even richer 3D visualization experience of those. But at scale now, you can do those tens of thousands. And we've done that for our own factories, and some of our forward-leaning customers have done it. And the productivity gains that they get are not multiple orders of magnitudes, but certainly close to order of magnitude in their throughput and productivity of the factories that they're building going forward. But then we need to take that digital twin and also put it into the production itself so that you can play with it in real time before you make a decision to choose to now route this product through another part of the line. Let the simulation run and figure out what's the optimal way of configuring in real time and adapting to a changing world. We need to put AI on top of that so the AI can play, but have that deterministic model, if you want. So when the AI hallucinates, that the deterministic model catches it and say, oh no, that won't work, right?
Yeah.
Go try something else. So you get this interplay between call it stochastic algorithms like AIs and then deterministic algorithms, and you get a win-win. So in the operation phase, I think a lot of that will then, as we unlock especially the data layer on the factory as well, so you have information about everything that's going on across your operations and production facilities, we can really unlock a lot of new value, and we can allow actually both humans and AI to play together and leverage who's best at what. So that's what I talk about when I talk about opportunity. We have a fantastic foundation, right? We have classic factory automation in place. We have SCADA systems, DCS systems, classic MES systems that allow you to automate everything. And without that, you could not automate automation, right? If the AI cannot, or the human being that's directing the AI, do not have an automation layer beneath them, they can only talk about things. They can't act, right? So it's that interplay between the new capabilities that are coming on board with the foundation that we already built that spells opportunity. Not to be a monologue, but if we want to kind of go back to where we were with physics, wasn't it Newton who said, if I've seen further than anyone else, it's because I stood on the backs of giants?
Yes.
So I think sometimes when we talk about new stuff, and I catch myself in this as well, we get fascinated by AI and new opportunities. They would not be possible if we did not already stand on the foundation that we built.
Yeah, that is so universal that it could be hard to remember how often it is the case. We're here because of the many small steps taken over long periods of time and investments and innovation by those who came before us. I definitely want to keep chatting with you, Mark, but I think let's leave it here for now. We'll be back soon with even more on software-defined everything and the role of operations software. If you haven't already, we have some great episodes with Rainer Brim talking about the automation side of all this, or you can check out even more on our website. We hope to have you back again soon for another episode of the Future Ready podcast.